You know, I've been walking all day today, and I keep asking myself one question. Was I gonna find you? Or were you gonna find me? So, I hear you're the new kid on the block. Bet you know who I am. They call me the Lazy Reviewer. And I'm not here to play coy with you. We both know this only ends two ways. Either you're the greatest movie on the planet, or you're nothing but yellow discounted trash.
Hey everyone, and another happy lazy Sunday to you, my lovely weekend warriors. I hope the weekend has been good to you all, and if not, sit back, relax, and let me entertain you for a moment. So this weekend's movie is the 9th film in the illustrious career of Quentin Tarantino, the visual mastermind behind films such as Kill Bill, Django Unchained, and of course Pulp Fiction. There's always a different take for each of his films, and this one promises to be a major love letter to Hollywood, showcasing what makes the art of films so grand and spellbinding. But also, looking at the trailer, this movie seems to me that Tarantino is going for a more tamer feel, because he usually has a tendency to, well... Why don't we go ahead and get into this one? Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, starring a pretty impressive cast which features Leonardo Dicaprio, Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Al Pachino, Kurt Russell, Timothy Olyphant, Margaret Qualley, Emile Hirsch, Dakota Fanning, Michael Madsen, and the late great Luke Perry in what was probably his last performance before tragically passing away. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood takes place in 1969, following the story of Dicaprio's character, Rick Dalton, who's a very well-known action star in Hollywood, and his very good friend and stunt double, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt. However, Rick and Cliff are starting to see that their days in the limelight are numbered, as producers and directors are just not as interested in these two guys as they used to be. So Rick is not going to take this line down, as he continues to act his heart out to show the world he's not just a has-been, he's
Rick fucking Dalton. Don't you forget.
Anytime you throw Quentin Tarantino's name on a film, you know you're in for something special. And I'm a huge fan of his work. I mean, come on, the guy is an amazing director who has such a unique style that makes all of his movies very memorable. Who else can make a natural conversation scene very interesting? I mean, not very many people, but this guy can. And that's because every one of his movies is a passion project that he doesn't just half-ass, because he wants to show his love for the films and have the audience feel the same sense of wonder and excitement that he gets when he directs them. But how did he do this time? Well, let's get into the positives. And one of the biggest questions we always ask ourselves is, can you have too much of a good thing? To which I must retort,
Yeah! Hell no!
If you want a second piece of cake, you get yourself a second piece of cake. If you want another glass of whiskey, you get yourself another glass of whiskey. And if you want to cast the two biggest names of Hollywood like Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt, then you get off your ass and you go get those actors. Because for Quentin Tarantino,
anything's possible!
And thank you, Jesus, for bringing us these two for what would be the best dynamic duo I've ever seen in a movie. Pitt and Dicaprio really bring a lot of humor and motivation for this movie, and of course, why not? We have two professional actors here. They just make the friendship feel so natural. It almost seems like they've been working together for a long time. I really liked Dicaprio in this movie. I thought he gave a solid performance. It's just interesting to see him in a different light than what we usually see him. Like I said, Leo is top-tier talent in Hollywood today, so to get to see him as this fading star was really funny. His character's so over the top, it was freaking hilarious to watch his reaction after he botches his lines during a performance.
Embarrass yourself like that in front of all those goddamn people!
There was also this really cute and funny scene he has with this little child actress played by Julia Butter, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but for me, I felt like there was this whole kind of circle of life thing, and no, not that circle of life, but looking at this, we have a young girl who is just starting her career, which, a little side note, this girl is f***ing awesome. She is so method, it was like watching a little Jared Leto. It's just so adorable to watch her talk to Dicaprio like an adult, and not taking any of his crap and showing him how times are changing. But back to my point, is that we see her starting her career and DiCaprio is at the end of his. So I loved how Tarantino set up this scene as both of these characters are just exchanging tips on how to act, and DiCaprio just gives an all-around great performance. Brad Pitt was also really good in here, and I'd say he had the toughest job between the two, and that was to bring this calmer, more sane energy between the two characters. And I feel a little bad for Cliff when it comes to dealing with Rick Dalton, because he's pretty much Dalton's little errand boy. He fixes anything that needs to be fixed at his house, he makes Dalton look good in front of the media, despite the fact that Rick would talk a little bit of shit on him, and he always has to chauffeur Rick around because he can't drive anymore for specific reasons. Despite all of that, it was an interesting dynamic we see here. Rick always vouches for Cliff so he can get work, and of course Cliff helps Dalton stay humble, because at first, Dalton almost comes off as really unlikable, but Pitt's character just understands why Dalton is the way he is, and he pushes him into a more likable state. And we also have to talk about a scene that he has with Bruce Lee, which is something I didn't think we need, but I'm glad we got. It was non-stop humor that was just a part of a side joke that shows why some people don't like Cliff, and the punchline is completely worth it, even if it's a little jarring because it kind of comes out of nowhere, but with it being one of the best scenes in the movie, I'll give it a pass. Okay. Let's get into the issues I had with the film. And the one thing I think really hurts this movie is that there is no cohesive plot line. Yes, we have an established idea with Rick and Cliff's fleeting fame, wow, try to say that 5 times fast. But this is something that never really gets flushed out in the movie, and the biggest reason why is that the film has tons of different moments where it's trying to set something that seems important up, but then we don't really get a resolution. It's never looked at again. And one of these moments takes place in a hippie commune where Cliff is visiting an old friend, but all of these young hippies seem to be squatting in his friend's house, and it's at this moment that we get our first bit of serious tension, because there is definitely an off-putting feeling you are getting from everyone who is there, but for the most part, there is no resolution with this moment, and he just drives off, and it's never looked at any further. It does nothing for the plot, and it just is a pointless scene. Another issue I had with the film was Margot Robbie's character, Sharon Tate, who was the most pointless thing in this movie. Instead of focusing on the awesomeness of DiCaprio and Pitt, the film spends an absurd amount of time following Robbie's character, making it seem like she's an integral part of the movie. But everything she does really doesn't have a bearing on the plot, and has absolutely nothing to do with Rick or Cliff. It shows her going to parties, or going shopping, or going to see her own movies. It's just a bunch of pointless scenes that bloat the runtime of this movie because it really doesn't add anything. It doesn't progress anything, and it's made even worse with the fact that she doesn't really have any noteworthy dialogue. In this movie, she has a few lines here and there, but it has really nothing to do with the larger narrative of the film. Her character was criminally underdeveloped, and I think you could have removed her from the film completely and nothing would have changed. So with all of that being said, I'm giving Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a B-. There was a lot of funny crap going on in this movie, and I found it fairly enjoyable. I just think there were too many pointless moments in the movie that made it much longer than it needed to be, so if you're a fan of Tarantino, you'll like this movie, but if you're new to the scene, I'd say this would be his weaker movie so far, and you might find it a bit hard to get into because he has such a different style that may not jive with you. Well, that's it for the review, you guys, but let's talk about it! Did you guys see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? If you did you like it? Did you hate it? Why don't you put your comments in the comments section down below, and if you like this video, give it a little bit of love by hitting that thumbs up button, and if you would like to see more of my reviews, subscribe to my channel by hitting that little bell icon, and you'll get notifications anytime I release a new review. Well, thank you for joining me again, and I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the weekend. I'll see you later.